Welcome to PSAV Hive at MPI. Thank you for joining us. Bill?
Thanks, Meg. Our topic today is what every meeting professional can learn from millennials. And to help us explain that, we have two award-winning millennials with us. First of all, Maria Meschi is Project Manager, Tourism and Convention and Event Management at IUPUI, and the recipient of the 2013 RISE Award for Young Professional Achievement. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
And on my immediate left is Jillian Mendoza, now meeting architect at Kinsley Meetings. And Jillian, you were the 2012 recipient of the RISE Award. So welcome both of you, and thank you for sharing some time with us.
Thank you.
I'm going to start, I guess, with Maria and ask a simple question. We're talking about millennials. What the heck age break is that? What period of time?
The traditional explanation of what a millennial is, I think, starts around 1980, the earliest, and goes into the early 2000s. So from the mid-teens to the early 30s. And I find myself, as someone who is at the early end of that range, a lot of my friends and colleagues of my age find that they don't necessarily identify with millennials. Maybe they feel that they were part of the generation before. I personally feel very strongly that I'm a millennial.
Oh, why wouldn't you?
Right?
Exactly.
We're great. It's a great thing to be.
So what does that mean to strongly identify with as a millennial?
For me, it means millennials are kind of very achievement driven. We also like our freedom. It's kind of this juxtaposition between wanting it all, I guess, and finding ways to actually achieve getting it all.
And how do you express that in business?
In business? Well, I think that there's definitely a desire for millennials to have that work-life balance. It's really been ingrained in us, and so we understand the need to, not let our work control our lives, but at the same time, that does not mean that we are not a driven generation, not by any means. So I think that the ways that we do business is a little bit different. There are statistics out there that actually say that HR professionals think that 1% of Gen Yers are hardworking and are loyal to their employers. And I just think that that's such a telling statistic that that's the people that are hiring us think about us. So it's up to us to prove them wrong, and the way we can prove them wrong is through our work and through our compassion and what we put out there to the industry.
Why would you, and you're using Gen Y as a euphemism for millennials.
Oh, yes,
so
exactly, yeah.
Why would you believe they would think that? Why would they think 1% are hardworking?
I have no idea.
I have a theory, and I think a part of that is because we work somewhat differently. I may leave earlier in the day, but I'm on my email all night long. We multitask in a different way. We're not necessarily chained to our desk 9 to 5 the way work has been done in the past. Doesn't mean the work isn't getting done, because it is.
It's just being done differently, and it's what works for us. Mm-hmm.
So baby boomers, as a baby boomer, we thought that we'd have to go in at work at 6 o'clock and stay till 6 o'clock at night, and that was the only way to work up the proverbial ladder. Where the millennials, it sounds like you don't feel that same need, and you can get there in a different way.
I think so. And I've been really lucky to have employers that they look at the results, not the hours. Because if I'm at my desk and I'm not working, that's of no value to anybody.
Right.
Whereas if you give me work to do and it gets done, but it got done and I got done at 4 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. and I went home, the work is still done.
So have you also found that employers are?
I definitely do, but on the opposite side, I'm sure there are so many people out there that have that issue within their place of employment that maybe that great relationship that you have doesn't exist. And so I think that opening up the lines of communication is so important. It sounds simple and a no-brainer really, but it really is, because we all do and interact differently, and we need to express that with one another so we have that understanding and mutual respect for one another. Because if you don't have that relationship with your employer, then they are going to think we're not loyal or hardworking. So I agree.
I could not agree more about having an open, setting out clear expectations and clear guidelines, and be willing to talk to your millennials about why you have these expectations, and then perhaps listen to them when they say, okay, well, but what if we tried it this way? What if the work got done, but I wasn't there in the office at 7 a.m.? but I was working from my desk at home at 7 a.m.
Right.
I'm not saying you absolutely have to change your entire company culture to do that, but have the conversation and see what they're proposing.
It's a two-way street. Do you both work for baby boomers, or what generation?
My direct supervisor is Generation X, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
Okay,
Yes.
and yours?
Baby boomer, but
Okay.
I'll say Gen X. So I
So
can,
let's
you know.
reverse it just for a little bit and say, what do millennials feel about the generation ahead of them that's managing them? How
that
could they
is
do
a
better?
good
And remember,
question.
your bosses are watching.
I know.
Right. Well, I have a phenomenal boss, and I have
speaking generally.
no,
As do I.
no complaints.
Fine.
But I have had some conversations with other people in that generation, and I've felt that they think we're entitled.
Exactly. There's so many misconceptions.
And do you sense that from them?
Yes, but like
your
you said,
boss.
it's such a two-way street. I have misconceptions about older generations that are not necessary. I mean, stereotypes are very prevalent, especially when the conversation turns to generations. You know, Gen Y or millennials, we're tech savvy. Well, not all of us are tech savvy, and that doesn't mean that a baby boomer or someone Gen X is equally or if not more tech savvy. So I think it's so much goes back to that communication and just being receptive to learning from one another.
And I think communication is an interesting topic because you said about being tech savvy. Many of us, X and boomers, assume that you like to communicate, you know, almost primarily with just through technology. How do you feel about that?
I think that there's ground that could stand on, but at the same time, I'm not glued to my phone 100% of the time, and I'm sure Maria isn't, but I
actually am. I love my phone. I'm on my smartphone all the time. It keeps me in touch. I actually went to a boarding school in a state that I did not grow up in with people from all around the world. I'm still in touch with these people. And the only reason, because I'm not great at writing letters, the only reason is because of the social networking that we have now. But I'm also a meeting planner. I totally recognize the value of face-to-face meeting and prefer that over social media interaction at all times. But I use it as an appendage in a way to use it as a tool to get more connection out of my life, not as a substitute for face-to-face.
But as a connectivity is so important, and that's a great point that you bring up, and especially in this industry, the face-to-face time is just, you know, nothing can compare to it. So, I think that there are plenty of people that are in other generations that are tech savvy and know what they're doing, can get on Twitter and do all of that fun stuff. So I don't know. Part of me agrees, but I think maybe it's more personal because I'm not maybe as tech savvy as the average Gen Y-er. So that's my opinion on that.
Well, and there are differences, though, and it's always risky to talk about generations because there are differences in baby boomers and all generations. But if you look for clusterings of things, I mean, you do, like connectivity, I think, much more comfortable with diversity and much more comfortable, having grown up with it, and much more comfortable with the importance of interpersonal connection versus being preached to or lectured. So I think there are some differences, are there not, in terms of meetings?
In terms of diversity and comfort level, I think so. I think that our generation on the whole have no trouble being pushed into new experiences. We've been doing that our whole lives, you know, and I relish it. I love to go to a meeting and have a new meeting format training that I've never tried before. And I see in some of the meetings that I plan with people who have been going to the same meeting for 30 years and it's been the same meeting for 30 years. I could see where some of the older generations might be more fearful of that.
A little risk averse.
You know, changes can be scary. And I think that in our generation, we welcome change. Everything changes so quickly, especially in technology, that it's something we've just gotten used to.
We've been constantly moving since we were born. I mean, there's been so much development in technology. I mean, it does play a role in our lives. So
Well, it's what you grow up with, yeah.
Exactly.
And I understand that, and again, another dangerous generalization, that millennials like to work in teams.
Yes.
And I know, speaking from a baby boomer's perspective, you know, there was a lot of individual competition, getting ahead of the next person. But you're more comfortable working in teams. Is that fair to say?
I certainly am. I thrive on collaboration. I love bouncing ideas around and seeing what the group can think of that an individual couldn't.
Because there's power in numbers. There really is. And getting those different points of view And I like working with people that aren't like me, so aren't in my generation, or have different life experience, work experience, and collaborating on that and seeing what can blossom and become of it. So I think that's very important.
And that's completely different than what the reputation of the millennials are, because the reputation is that you're tech savvy and that you're glued to your technology and that's how you like to communicate, and yet you're very collaborative. So it's interesting to see how that next step of meetings
I would
happens.
say that to me, the tech and the social media is just an extension of that collaboration. It's like the tweeting at conferences. If I'm on my phone during a session, it's because I'm interested to see what nuggets other people are picking up from this session, not because I'm not paying attention to the presenter. You know, so to me, it's just an extension of that collaborative spirit.
And it's sharing that knowledge with people that aren't in the room, that aren't at the conference, and who are within your network, and just kind of expanding on what's happening in the actual room. So that's an excellent point.
My last question would be pretty simple. I mean, you're both recipient of the RISE Award. You're both smarter now and more experienced now than you were a year ago.
Very true.
So what do you know now that you didn't know when you got into this business to begin with? Jillian, I'll start with you.
How the different components that are so involved in our industry. I had no idea, and I love learning. I think that's one of the key things for, we have our degrees, but I crave knowledge and I crave learning. So I think that I'm continuing to develop and continuing to learn those key points that, I didn't know this last year, and how I can apply that and grow as an individual.
But it's more complicated than you
So much
imagined.
more complicated, yes. Oh my, yeah.
Maria?
Though I came through an event training program, ultimately I have kind of a different background than a lot of people, and in the arts and in creative fields. And every time I talk to somebody, I'm so delighted to find that people want that, and that is still in demand here. And it's kind of been my goal, and my favorite thing about the industry is that I can bring so much of myself that isn't the business person into my work and have it be well received.
Personality,
Yeah.
experience, creativity.
Great.
That's terrific. It says a lot about the industry.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Well, we've been speaking to Maria Meschi and Jillian Mendoza, both recipients of the RISE Award, and we appreciate your time. Meg?
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
both,
you.
ladies.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, and be sure to come back to the PSAV Hive at MPI for the next episode.